Hello and welcome to the Aetherdrift limited set review. In this video I'll be talking about the multicolored cards and how good I think they'll be in the upcoming limited format, specifically with a focus around draft. I do this using a set of 5 tiers. They're a little bit different than maybe some of the way other people evaluate cards, but I try to do it based on sort of when I take the card in a pack. It's sort of outlined here. Tier 1 is the best cards, Tier 5 is the worst cards. If you haven't been here before, feel free to read up on what that means. And if you like set reviews and other maybe miscellaneous limited content, feel free to subscribe. And we're just going to get started with the set review. So, first we have Achik Emerald Radiant, 3 black, green for a 3/3. When it enters, create a 1/1 green insight creature token for each artifact and or creature card in your graveyard. Whenever another insight you control dies, put a +1/+1 counter on it. Each opponent loses 1 life. So, for 6 mana, you're getting a 3/3 and 3 to 4 tokens on average, probably closer to 3 tokens on average, which, it's good, right? Obviously, so the ideal scenario of like this gets in play and your opponent kills the insects first and then kills this, obviously it's sick, right? Like it gets a bunch of counters. So if you have a way to like sacrifice the insects for value or do something like that, then it's great. But there aren't a lot of ways to do that in like green black. Green white has some, or black white has some ways to do like sacrifice stuff, but green black I don't think is really doing that. This is like there are ways to enable this in green black. Cycling, there's some self mill, there's other stuff. So I think it's going to be on a lot. But the problem I have is, just dies to Lightning Strike. Lightning Strike is in the set, 6 mana, 3/3. You play this on turn 6, and your opponent untaps and spends 2 mana and kills it. And you have like 3/1/1 tokens, which is great. Like it's good that you have the 3/1/1 tokens, but was it worth like not being able to play a card for the first 6 turns of the game to do that? I don't know. I think it's so that's why I've kind of put it in tier 3 here. It's kind of in the middle. Like I think you'll play this in black green. I don't think I would. I can't see myself not playing it. I mean, I could. But like black green's never super aggressive, so I don't think it would really ever not play it. But I just can't imagine like wanting to. I don't think this is the reason to go into it. There is not a lot of graveyard hate in the set though, so that's another thing to note. Like the stuff that's in the graveyard is kind of going to stay there. Apocalypse Runner, 2 black, red for a 6/5 vehicle with crew 3, and it has the ability to tap to give target creature you control power 2 or less lifelink, and it makes it unblockable this turn. So that ability is actually very strong, especially because you can activate it immediately on turn 4. As far as I remember with vehicles are artifacts, they're not creatures yet. If you were to crew it and then try to activate it, you wouldn't be able to activate it. I think it's weird like that, but yeah, you can activate this immediately and you can get something in for 2. And lifelink is, I mean, just because something is power 2 or less right now doesn't mean it's going to be power 2 or less later, right? So lifelink is a lot. Like this is just kind of a lot. It just kind of does a lot. It's kind of a card that seems sort of unassuming, but I think this really does do quite a bit. I think this is going to be very strong. A 6/5 vehicle's nothing to ignore either. It's kind of big. Like you do have to deal with it. This is something that is going to eat some artifact removal, which there is plenty of. But yeah, Boom Scholar, 1 red green for a 3/3. Exhaust abilities of other permanents you control cost 2 less to activate. Exhaust 4 red green creatures and vehicles you control gain trample until end of turn to put 2 +1/+1 counters on this creature. This doesn't excite me. It seems like a fine card. I don't really believe in exhaust as like an archetype, so there's like blue, green, and red green are kind of the exhaust colors, and I don't know what to say. I don't like. You kind of got to prove it to me. Like exhaust abilities costing 2 less is good, but almost all the exhaust abilities have colored mana in them, which means that this is not always like it's not going to work for every exhaust ability. It doesn't work on its own exhaust ability, so that's 6 mana. It just dies to any removal on turn 3. Like you can just remove it and it's gone, and it didn't do anything. it doesn't do anything like there's not really pressure to remove it because exhaust abilities tend to be like later game abilities. They tend to be pretty expensive. They tend to like they're sort of focused around value, obviously, because they're mana sinks, and so you're not feeling pressured to kill this on turn 3 necessarily because what your opponent wants to do on turn 4 is just play their 4-drop. They don't necessarily want to be like, oh, I'm gonna activate 2 exhaust abilities of like my creatures that already exist, right? Like that doesn't really happen. Um, so I'm not super optimistic about the exhaust decks. I think this card is fine, but not super exciting. If the exhaust decks are good, this will be good, but I have a hard time believing that something that's so weak to just any removal spell is going to be very strong. Boosted Sloop. 1 blue-red for a 3/3 with menace. When you attack, draw a card, and then discard a card, and it has crew 1. Yeah, this is just a sweet card. It's so easy to enable on turn 3. You play this on turn 3 and your 2-drop attacks, and then you're off to the races. You've already gotten one looting trigger. There are so many things in this set that trigger, especially in blue-red, off of looting stuff. The blue-red deck looks very strong to me. I'm very excited about the blue-red deck. I think the blue-red deck looks very powerful. And I think this card is a reason why that's the case. It can attack very easily, menace. It's really hard to block a blue-red menacing creature because there's so much cheap interaction in those 2 colors. Yeah, this card just looks very nice. Bright Glass Gearhulk. Green, green, white, white for a 4/4 with first strike and trample. When this creature enters, you may search your library for up to 2 artifact, creature, and or enchantment cards with mana value 1 or less. Reveal them, put them into your hand, and then shuffle. So, it's a 4 mana 4/4 that draws you 2 cards. Like, obviously the stats are really good, right? Like, it's huge. It's a big guy, whatever. The reason it's not in tier 1 is simple, and it's the casting cost, right? Green, green, white, white is really prohibitive. And that's it. If you have like a lot of dual lands to fix your mana, so that you can cast this on turn 4 reliably, even turn 5, it's going to be great on turn 5. First strike trample, you can't really do anything about it. It gets value on ETB. There's plenty of things in white and green. There's like a really high value enchantment in white that's 1 mana, and there's some other artifacts that are 1 mana in white specifically that I'm thinking of that are really strong. I mean, that it's a very strong thing to have. Do you want to be pack 1 pick 1ing this? Not really. It's kind of tough, right? Because if you pack 1 pick 1 this, there's a decent chance you don't get to play it. It's not really splashable at all. So that's why it's in tier 2 and not tier 1. Obviously, if it's in your deck, it's going to be great, but it's just a card that is difficult to start your draft with. Broadside Barrage. 1 blue-red for an instant. Broadside Barrage deals 5 damage to target creature or planeswalker, draw a card, and then discard a card. Yeah, I mean, obviously, so blue-red, as I said earlier, with the sloop, looks great. Another great blue-red signpost. It's just a good on-rate removal spell at instant speed, and it gives you extra value. Like, there's really nothing more you could ask for. I could see moving this to tier 1. I really could. It's very powerful. I think it is better than the sloop because it's interaction. The one thing that this doesn't do that some other removal spells in the format do is interact directly with vehicles. So you can get into kind of weird spots where your opponent has a vehicle on the field, they don't crew it, and you want to remove it, and you can't because it's just sitting there and it's not being crewed right now, and you don't want to leave up like 3 mana for the rest of the game. So I think that could kind of be an issue with this and other types of removal in the set where you're like, well, I'd really like to be able to like kill their vehicle, but it just kind of can't right now. But I think that's just not like a reason enough to like. I'm not going to downgrade it for that. I'm just going to leave it here, and it's going to be great. It's going to be a great removal spell. Broodheart Engine, green black for an artifact at the beginning of your upkeep. Surveil 1, and you can pay 2 green black and sacrifice this to return target creature or vehicle card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Activate only as a sorcery. 4 mana for a reanimation spell is not very good. This enables itself a little bit, right? You get to surveil your big stuff into the graveyard, and then you get to get it back. Great. there's just a lot of ways to interact with this. If your opponent really like doesn't want you reanimating stuff, there's a bunch of artifact removal. It does nothing on turn. Like, this is so bad in a format where like speed exists, because on turn 2, if you play a card that doesn't like impact the board, and your opponent has a card that says like has a speed card, you're just dead. Like, they're just gonna get to max speed immediately. And then like if your opponent gets to max speed on turn 4 and you have no speed, you're probably just losing the game. Like, this card looks extremely unplayable, at least early. I think there can be a space in the later part of the format when things like this could maybe work, but and the rate isn't, it's not as bad as it kind of looks. Like, it looks like really bad. It's like, oh, you're paying 6 mana for a reanimate. It's like, well, you're paying it over 2 turns. You don't have to reanimate on turn 4. You can keep getting surveil value, and that does chip up over the course of the game. But like, it's so slow. I would be shocked if I'm playing this until week 5, week 6. I don't know. Captain Howler, Sea Scourge. 2 blue red for a 5/4 with ward 2, pay 2 life. Whenever you discard one or more cards, target creature gets +2/+0 until end of turn. For each card discarded this way, whenever that creature deals combat damage to a player this turn, you draw a card. This card is very strong. So the rate is good. 4 mana 5/4 with ward 2 and you have to pay 2 life. That's really strong. And I'm thinking about moving this up to tier 1 because it's so easy to enable this in this set. Like, there's a lot of like, you can cycle at any time. So there's the threat of activation, and there's a lot of 2 mana, 1 mana cycling cards. Like, there's worlds where on turn 5 you play this and you just have it immediately, and your opponent can't block, and then you're drawing a card. When you cycle, like, your cycling draws you 2 cards. That's powerful. It's something your opponent's gonna have to interact. Like, basically, your opponent has to kill this, or else they lose, and they have to pay 2 life and ward 2 to do it. I'm just gonna put it in tier 1. I'm just gonna do it. I really like blue-red. This is a card that's going to be great in that deck. I think you can pretty safely be like, yeah, I'm going to take this and I'm just going to play blue-red and I'm going to be happy. Like, yeah, this card looks very powerful to me. Caradora, Heart of Alacria. 2 green-white for a 4/2. It's a creature that kind of looks like it has flying but doesn't. When Caradora enters, you may search your library for a mount or vehicle card, reveal it, put it into your hand, and then shuffle. If one or more +1/+1 counters would be put on a creature or vehicle you control, that many +1/+1 counters are put on it instead. That one +1. So it has the, like, what's it called ability? I don't remember the guy's name. But yeah, I mean, it's a 4 mana 4/2 that draws you a card, and it tutors your best mount or vehicle, which you're going to have in your deck. Like, 100% of your decks are going to have mounts or vehicles, and there's some very powerful ones. 2 toughness is not great, but there's some counter stuff. I wouldn't say it's like a main theme, but there's enough that this is going to come up. And your opponent does, like, it's not something that your opponent's going to like want to remove for that reason, really. It just crews stuff well. It's a 4/2. You can crew a vehicle immediately. It's just pretty good. It just kind of does a lot. I don't think it's quite tier 1. I want to say that it is, but it's a little small. It's a little small is all I will say. It's going to be a good card, but I don't know if I prefer this guy. I'm just gonna say it. I prefer the shark. I like the big shark. Okay, I like that there's a shark on the screen, and I prefer this one. Cloudspire Coordinator. Red white for a 3/1. When this creature enters, scry 2. You can tap it and create X/1/1 colorless pilot creature tokens, where X is the number of mounts and or vehicles that entered the battlefield under your control this turn. And the pilot tokens can crew vehicles as though their power were 2 greater. This is a strong 2-drop, right? So 2 mana 3/1 has kind of had its time come and go. When I first got back into playing limited, 3 years ago, the 2 mana 3/1 was kind of riding high. There was kind of a moment. It was kind of it was very strong at the time. And recently, the 2 mana 3/1s become somewhat of an undesirable stat line on turn 2 because of there being so many tokens. And this kind of solves that problem a bit because it helps you do things. A, it scries 2 and ETBs, and B, it also like makes more tokens. It plays very well with the other signpost. I believe that if you hold full control in Arena, you can play the vehicle. That we'll see the vehicle soon. You play the vehicle in response to it entering the battlefield. Maybe you can't because I think that ETB has to go on the stack first. I don't know. Rules people will figure that out. But anyway, the it's just if you're playing vehicles in your deck and you are going to play vehicles in your deck, if this doesn't have a good attack, you can instead make a thing that crews vehicles. That's really nice. It's good. It's going to have relevance over the course of the whole game, and it's actually not it's a good top deck. It's a good top deck because it scries too. So good card. Here's the vehicle. 2 red, white for a 2/3 with flying. When it enters distribute, 2+1/+1 counters among 1 or 2 other target vehicles and or creatures you control. Crew 1. I didn't actually know that you could put this all on one thing. I thought you actually had to put it on 2 things. That makes this, I don't know, 10% better. That's pretty good. Like, that's a big increase. I mean, this is just a beating. Like, this card is very strong. Obviously, you need to have other creatures in play, but it's I mean, you're gonna have creatures that you're playing red white. Like, you're just going to have them. This is the perfect card to be at the top of your curve. I want to even move it up to tier 1, maybe. Is that what I want to do? I'm thinking about it. Putting a 4-drop in tier 1, is that something that I really believe in? If you this gets like better in multiples. If you have multiple of them, then you can put the counters on the other one and then attack that turn. It's just like, it's very strong. It's very powerful. Makes a lot of it's just a lot of material for 4 mana. It's got flying. Crew was only 1. I mean, crew 2 I think would have been reasonable to put on this, and it would have been. I mean, the crew number almost doesn't matter. Like, if it was crew, the first crew number that would really kind of be like, okay, well, this actually is hard to attack with is 4. Up to crew 3, I think is pretty reasonable in Boros, given the last card we just saw. I don't know. I could certainly see this being the best signpost in the set, for sure. Certainly could see it. Coalstoke Gearhulk. 1 black, black, red, red for a 5/4 menace and death touch. When this creature enters, put target creature with mana value 4 or less from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control with the finality counter on it. That creature gains menace, death touch, and haste. At the beginning of your next end step, exile that creature. So you can put from either graveyards, you can whatever. It's a 5 mana 5/4 menace, death touch. Good. That's good size, but not especially exciting. As with all of the Gear Hulks, the casting cost is prohibitive. It's less prohibitive on turn 5 than it is on turn 4. Considerably less so on 5 mana. And you can get a lot of value out of this. You can take your opponent's high value threat out of their graveyard. Sometimes they have ETBs. You can put something from your graveyard into play. It basically is going to deal a bunch of damage to your opponent because they don't really want to block. It's great. Hard to cast, but great. That's kind of going to be true for all the Gear Hulks. There's one exception to this, I think. But all the Gear Hulks are pretty much, yeah, it's really good, but do you really want to start your deck with a double pipped card? And the answer is, or like a quad pipped card. The answer is like, not really. So keep that in mind. Debris Beetle. 2 green, black for a 6/6 with trample. It's a vehicle. When this vehicle enters, each opponent loses 3 life and you gain 3 life, and it is crew 2. So I put this in tier 1, and it's a little ambitious, right? 4 mana, like, it doesn't do anything when it enters the battlefield, other than drain your opponent for 3, which is, I mean, draining your opponent for 3. I should move it back down to tier 2. But it's really strong. Like, this is a reason that I would be interested in getting into green-black for this card. It's hard to block. It's huge. Its crew cost is very small. Draining your opponent for 3 is so powerful. Yeah, I think I'm just gonna keep it in tier 1. It's a simple one. It's probably the reason. One of the reasons this is probably not going to be great is that black green is not going to be great. We'll see other black greens. Like we saw for black green's first signpost, it was basically a blank. That means the color pair is going to probably be kind of bad. So this card's probably not going to perform super well, but I think it's a strong card in a vacuum. But I think in this set context, it's probably going to suffer. Which actually means I should move it up to tier 2. So I'll move it to tier 2, and then I'll say with the caveat that it is due to the context. All right, Dune Drifter, X white black for a 3/3. When this vehicle enters, return target artifact or creature card with mana value X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Crew 2. So I'm never a huge fan of these type of cards. But I should bump this up, and I will. The reason I don't like this, so the base rate is not good. 2 mana for a 3/3 vehicle with crew 2 is just not a good rate. That's kind of part of the reason I'm concerned. It's so okay. Like when you pay 3 mana, get a 1-drop back, but you can't do that on curve usually. Like that's part of the concern, right? So 5 mana, this vehicle, and a 3/3. Pretty good. Or like not and a 3/3 and a 3-drop. That's pretty good. That's kind of the sweet spot, right? Like once you get to 5 mana, you're pretty happy. At 4, even at 4, it's not so bad. Yeah, you know what? I'm gonna move this up. I'm gonna stop being a hater. It has all the problems that these type of cards have, where like you need to have something in your graveyard, or it doesn't. I mean, this one at least does something, but the something it does is very bad. I could say it's artifacts too. It kind of hits it all. Maybe I should just put it in tier 2. Maybe I should just stop being like a weak mindset and just put it in tier 2 where it probably deserves to be. Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about that. I'm thinking about it. So the base 2-drop is bad, but you can still play it. Like you can still play it on turn 2. I'm sus. I'm suspicious of this card. Give me another moment to ponder it. You know what? I'm in. I've decided I've moved it up 2 full tiers. Very rare development in these set reviews. I'm in on Dune Drifter. The value is too good. I think it's just too good. Like the fact that you can buy it out and just have a 2 mana vehicle and play that as like a thing is I think it's good. Like I think that's actually kind of good. And you know, on turn 6, getting a 4-drop back and getting this, it's pretty good. Like there are powerful cards in the set that are cheap, and this enables you to get them back. There's not a ton of exile in the set, specifically for artifact removal. When your opponent removes like your best artifact, they're mostly destroying it, and this can get that back. So I'm choosing to believe. Embalmed Ascendant, 1 white black for a 1/2. Would start your engines. When it enters, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token, and when you're at max speed, whenever a creature you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. So it's only creatures you control dying, first of all. But also, this doesn't, like, the speed cards that are like, oh man, if you enable speed, it's good, but it doesn't really help you do that at all. Those scare me. This one is a good example of that, where it's like, I really want to be at max speed. I'm making a 2/2. It's like, okay, well, you know, I'm not sure that's really going to get the job done in a set where there's so many, 2 mana 2/3s and 3 mana 2/3s, and there's some 3 mana 3/2s, but it's really more 2/3s, and yeah, I don't know. This a year ago I would have put this in tier 2, but given how bad 3 mana 1/1 make a 2/2 has been, and this is better than that. It's a 1/2, and that's significant. There are 1/1 tokens lying around, but you weren't. You know what I mean? Like that wasn't the. I don't think that was the deal breaker. We'll see. We'll see. Explosive Getaway. 3 red, white for a sorcery. Exile up to 1 target artifact or creature. Return it to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. Explosive Getaway deals 4 damage to each creature. So 5 mana to deal 4 to each creature is kind of a bad rate. Like you would normally expect to get that at 4 mana for like a double pip in red. That's sort of historically been the rate. You're paying 1 extra to exile something, to flicker something and save your best creature. The save your best creature wraths tend to be very good. The problem with the conditional wraths tend to be very bad. So this is somewhere in the middle. and I've rated it as such. I think it's going to be decent, but and you theoretically can just be like, well, I'm going to bounce my best thing and it's going to give me value. It's like, okay. I think that can be true, and I think in a lot of. But the thing is, like, do you? I guess the thing. Red's signpost vehicle works with this, but also your opponent's vehicles work with this, right? Like your opponent's has going to have vehicles that don't get hit by this. That's part of the concern too. Is does this actually clear your opponent's board when you need it to? And it's like, well, not as often as maybe you'd want. So I don't know. Maybe it'll just be busted though. I have a history of not rating wraths properly. Far Fortune End Boss. 2 black red for a 4/5 with start your engines. Whenever you attack, it deals 1 damage to each opponent. Max speed, if a source you control would deal damage to an opponent or permanent an opponent controls, it deals that much damage plus 1. So this is a very powerful static effect to have on a creature, as we know from the past. The stats are just good, right? So we got a 4/5. It's just big. It's just kind of large on turn 4. It starts your engines, which, hopefully this isn't the card that's starting your engines. But if your engines are on 3 and you attack while this is in play, they go to 4 because you pings your opponent, and then it goes to 4 before damage is assigned, right? So that's actually pretty significant because it buffs, it makes your stuff deal all that much more damage. And having your engines on by turn 4 is not unrealistic. Or turn 5, right? Turn 4 or turn 5, you play this, and the engines are you're at max speed. That's very realistic, and it when you're at max speed, this is just kind of a house. It makes all your creatures attack for more damage. It chips your opponent, and it actually starts chipping your opponent for 2 if you're at max speed. So that just seems really strong to me. I'm just a big believer in red black, as you'll see throughout the set review. Fearless Swashbuckler. 1 blue red for a 3/3 with haste. Vehicles you control have haste. Whenever you attack, if a pirate and a vehicle attacked this combat, draw 3 cards, then discard 2 cards. Yeah, this is strong. Again, I like blue red a lot. This is powerful. It has haste for 3 mana. It gives your vehicles haste, which is significant. There's a world where there's not that many. There's some pirates. I should actually check the number of pirates. I don't think there's not not every common creature is a pirate. So it's not gonna be like this. Has to be attacking a lot of the time for it to trigger, and then you might lose it. But a lot of the discard stuff, the payoffs, trigger per card you discard. So getting to discard 2 cards is quite nice. And yeah, you're gonna have vehicles. So yeah, this is strong, very strong, and could even be tier 1 like the other blue red stuff. Gostal Thrill Seeker. 2 red black for a 2/3 with start your engines. When this creature enters, it deals 1 damage to target opponent, and you gain 1 life. This creature has, and at max speed, it has Death Touch and Haste. This card is an absolute menace. So on turn 2, you play this, and it's a 2-mana 2/3, and it starts your engines, but your engines start at 2 because you already pinged your opponent for 1. I mean, that's just insane, right? Like, you're already halfway. Like, you need to connect. You need 2 more instances of your opponent losing life on your turn for your engines to be at max. And if you had a if you don't play it on 2, like if you play it on turn 4 or turn 5 or something later on in the game, when your engines are at 3 and you just need 1 more thing, this gets you to max speed. Then it has Death Touch and Haste and can attack. It's just so strong at every point of the game. It really helps enable the engine stuff. It works well with both red black. It works well with the other red black signpost, which it has because it has power 2. It can get in and have lifelink. Looks really strong to me. So I really like red black. I think red black looks incredibly strong, and this is one of the reasons why. Guidelight Pathmaker. 4 white blue for a 6/5 vehicle with vigilance. When this vehicle enters, you may search your library for an artifact card and reveal it. Put it onto the battlefield if its mana value is 2 or less, otherwise put it in your hand. Crew 2. Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of so the stats on this are bad. Like, red black gets a 6/5 vehicle at 4 mana, so that's 2 extra mana that you're paying to do this artifact tutoring, and you're not getting the same ability. I know it has vigilance, but this is that doesn't matter on turn 6 really. Like this is just so like the red black one is so much better than this one. You know what I mean? And just seems really slow in this format. I'm not saying it's bad necessarily. Like it's fine if it if you do the thing, it's good. But I think it's gonna end up being very slow, and I think this is gonna be tough. I actually kind of like blue white, but I think the signposts are maybe not putting it in the direction it needs to be in. Haunt the Network. 3 blue black for a sorcery. Choose target opponent. Create 2/1/1 colorless Thopter artifact creature tokens with flying. Then the chosen player loses X life and you gain X life, where X is the number of artifacts you control. So bare minimum, 5 mana, make 2/1/1 flyers, drain your opponent for 2. Pretty good. That's pretty good. You're very likely to have at least one more artifact in play, maybe 2. And if this is draining for 4, it's very strong. Now you know me, and you know how much I hate signposts that cost 5 plus. Because of what, like, this is super splashable. That kind of concerns me, right? So, the card being strong may actually make blue-black worse, which it's just not, you know what I mean? Like, that can actually be a problem. So I'm kind of more of a believer in this card than I am in blue-black because of how splashable it is. And I mean, I should move it up. I should move it up a tier as a result of that. Because the card is powerful. It's a powerful card, and it's gonna drain your opponent for 4 sometimes. And sometimes I mean it's like pretty frequently it's gonna drain your opponent for 4. That's like a lot. That's a lot of stuff. And sometimes it's more than that. And sometimes it's whatever. It's pretty good in the average game, and all your blue decks are gonna want this and probably try to play it and splash it maybe. And not all the black decks, but all the blue decks probably. I mean, maybe no. Even I think blue red would be interested. So I don't know. It certainly it doesn't make me feel good about blue black, but it makes me feel good about this card. Haunted Hell Ride. 1 blue black for a 3/3. Whenever you attack target creature you control gains +1/+0 until end of turn. Death touch until end of turn. Untap it and it has crew 1. Yeah, I mean this is fine. This is a fine vehicle. It's an artifact. It doesn't excite me. Like, I think there's better 3-drops in both colors than this. You'll play it. I can't imagine not playing it in a blue black deck. It's solid. But how much attacking? Like, you know what I mean? Is blue black a deck where you're going to be attacking? It's like I don't know about that. It doesn't sound right. That doesn't sound like. I mean, you're going to be attacking more than blue white, which I think is actually bodes well for you. But I'm concerned. I'm concerned about this card, and it just not being that good. Because like if you're on like your 2-drop just trades with your opponent's 2-drop, I was like how that's pretty frequently happening anyway. So I don't know. It's fine. Seems fine. Ketramos, the New Dawn. 1 white black for a 4/4 with menace, lifelink, and indestructible. It can't attack or block unless there are 7 or more cards in exile. Whenever 1 or more cards are put into exile from graveyards and or the battlefield during your turn, you draw a card and lose 1 life. There's just not that many ways to exile stuff. It's great if you have a way to ever have it be a creature. It's good even if it's just kind of an enchantment that just sits there and. Oh, I guess it can crew stuff. I didn't think about that. Hold on. Wait a minute. I forgot that this can crew stuff. Because it's not that it's not a creature. It can't attack or block. That's actually very different. After reviewing, there are very few cards that work with this. There's 2 commons. There's the commons that exile themselves if you have max speed. The cycle of those. There's the white removal spell. The white removal spell is really the one, like the one that works on tapped creatures. That one's good. That's the way to do this. But just having a 3-mana 4/4 to crew stuff, because it's never going to be able to attack. I can't imagine that there's a game where this gets to attack. I just don't think there's going to be 7 cards in exile. I don't think that that's going to happen. So I think that it being a 3-mana 4/4 that just crews stuff and sometimes draws you like 1 card that's just not something you want to take super high. This is one of those cards that like might just work, and I'm missing something, and I'm like, well, this was super wrong about that. I just think there's not that much. There's not that enough exile to like enable it. Culloden, Triumph, Caster. Red white for a 2/3 mounts and vehicles you control have haste. Whenever a mount you control enters, it becomes settled until end of turn. Whenever a vehicle you control enters, it becomes an artifact creature until end of turn. Simple and very strong, right? The reason I don't have it in tier 1 is that it just dies to everything and does not. Just, 2 mana 2/3 is not as good as it once was. But the mount one is really the one I'm more excited about. Even though red white is more vehicle centric. Like, mounts getting saddled tends to have really good effects, where vehicles just get to it, like, they just need to be. Sometimes they're just stuff, you know what I mean? This is strong. Maybe I should move it back up to tier 1. No, I'm going to leave it here. It's strong. It's a good card. I'm happy about it. Lagorian, Soul of Alacria. Green-white for a 1/1 with flying. When it's a mount, when it attacks while saddled, put a +1/+1 counter on each of up to 2 target mounts or vehicles. And you can saddle it for 1. So this is a card that on turn 2 is going to be very scary, and on turn 5 is going to do nothing. That's not necessarily true, but it's definitely a card that can snowball and run away with the game, because it buffs itself and something else on turn 3. The problem is, how often are you actually going to get to do that? You need to have another mount in play, and the mounts, I'm just going to be saying it, the mounts aren't that great. The mounts aren't, there's not, there are some good ones, but they're, you're not every game going to be. But the vehicle stuff, that works. It's actually easier if you have a 1-drop, because then on turn 3 you can play a vehicle and then saddle this and then attack and then put the +1/+. So that's really the way to do it. But if you don't saddle this, it just kind of doesn't do anything. That's the concern. And I had this rated lower originally, but I just figured the upside is probably so strong that I'll leave it in here, but I'm concerned for sure. Loot the Pathfinder, 2 green, blue, red for a 2/4 with double strike, vigilance, and haste. Has 3 exhaust abilities. Each of them cost 1 colored mana and it can tap. So the green one taps to add 3 mana of any one color, the blue one taps to draw 3 cards, and the red one taps to deal 3 damage to any target. Yeah, this is a very powerful card. The thing about it is that it is 3 colors, and so that's why it's in tier 2 and not tier 1, but the power level is tier 1 power. It's just, you're committing to trying to play 3 colors in your deck, and this is worth doing that for, but, you know me, I like to have solid, I'm a mana base guy. I like a mana base to look good, and this card makes it more difficult for your mana base to look good. Mendicant Core Guidelight. White-blue for a star 3. Its power is equal to the number of artifact creatures you control. It has Start Your Engines. And at max speed, whenever you cast an artifact spell, you may pay 1 if you do copy it. The issue with this card is that blue-white is not the best at generating speed. It's just not. It just isn't that good at it. And this card doesn't do a ton to help. It's a 2 mana 1/3 that, it scales with the game, right? You do get more artifacts in play. And it's a good 2-drop. I have it in tier 1 because, there are flyers in blue-white. It's not impossible to activate max speed. It's not literally impossible. It's just going to be harder. And the upside is really high. There's tons of artifacts, and paying 1 to double your spells is very strong. The one thing, again, another thing about it is it does just kind of die to removal on turn 2. Is that a problem? It is a problem. But in the other direction, it gets in with just removal. Blue-white's removal is maybe not as. No, it's not. That means it does have an ETB. Start Your Engines. I should. No, I'm gonna leave it in here. It's really fun. It might be a little too like. X speed's tough to get on blue-white. That's the concern. If this was a red black card, I would be like so certain it would be in tier 1. But because it's blue-white, I'm much more hesitant. I'm much more hesitant to put it in here because the text on the card is great, but the colors of mana that it costs to cast the card are concerning. My Meoplasm, the revered one. X green blue black for a 0/0, and it enters, you exile up to X creature cards from your graveyard. It enters with 3+1/+1 counters on it for each creature card exiled this way. And you pay 2 mana. It becomes a copy of target creature or card exiled with it, except it's a 0/0 and has this ability. It's you know, it's the Meoplasm. I get it's 3 colors of mana. You need to have setup. Like the setup needs to have happened. You need to not die. On 4 mana, it's not good enough. 5 mana, it's fine, and 6 mana, it's great. But you need to have 3 creatures, and they have to be good creatures, and whatever. So, not my type of card, really. I mean, it's not. That's a lie when I say that. It's whatever. But it's certainly not a card that I think you want to start with. Oil Deep Gearhulk. Blue, blue, black, black, 4/4. Lifelink, Ward 1. When this creature enters, look at the top. Look at target player's hand. You may choose a card from that. If you do, that player discards that card and then draws a card. This is just not like as good as the other one, like the other two we've seen so far, because it doesn't. It's card neutral, first of all, and again, the double pip is more punishing on turn 4 than it is on turn 5. So I like this one a little less. Lifelink is great. Lifelink is really good and limited, but Ward 1 is not quite enough for me, unfortunately. I think this is going to be good, and you'll be happy to have it in a blue-black deck, but I don't think you want to be aggressive with it. Pyrowood Gearhulk. 2 green, green, red, red. For a 7/7 Vigilance Menace, when it enters, other creatures you control get +2/+2 and gain Vigilance and Menace until end of turn. Damage can't be prevented this turn. So this one's much bigger, and as I just talked about, 6 mana makes the casting cost a little more stomachable than on 4, so it's easier to cast, which is good. It's also huge, which is good. It's good to be big. Size is a skill, so we like that. Obviously, 6 drops we're not going to have a huge rating for, but this ends the game a lot. Like, this is going to end the game, even if you just have, like, 2 other creatures in play. They're going to have great attacks, and your opponent's going to be in trouble. Ranger's Ether Hive. 1 blue-green for a 3/5 with Vigilance. When you activate an exhaust ability, create a 1/1 colorless Thopter artifact creature token with flying, and it has crew 1. This vehicle is very strong. Do not get it twisted. I don't believe in exhaust I don't believe in this deck. Like, this deck, I don't. If the deck is even like close to being something, this is the reason why. But I just don't really believe in it, because you have to play this on 3. Then you have to like have an exhaust ability to activate. That's kind of a lot of pressure though, because you can activate the exhaust ability and then crew this. But it's 3/5 Vigilance is that big or small in this format? There's actually kind of like a decent amount of Death Touch running around. There's like a lot of like Death Touch stuff going on. Kind of scares me. It blocks. Like, this is a good blocking vehicle. I should move this up. It is very strong on blocks, and although the exhaust cards don't like inspire a lot of confidence, they make me feel like I don't want to be playing them in my deck, and as a result, this card might be worse. The rate on it is very strong. Exhaust is like a cautious like, hey, I'm not sure you actually want to be doing this, but this will help you do it if you want to. Red Shift Rocketeer Chief. Red-green for a 2/3 with Vigilance, and you can tap it to add X mana of any one color, where X is red shift's power. Spend this mana only to activate abilities, and it has exhaust for 10 red-green. Put any number of permanent cards from your hand onto the battlefield. That ability obviously does not matter, but tapping for mana to. I should put this. I should move this up too. This is just too harsh on the exhaust stuff. I'm being too harsh. The harshness towards exhaust is not deserved. This is just a good card, right? Like 2 mana, 2/3 Vigilance. It can, attack and also crew something on blocks. It adds 2 mana. That's strong. Yes, it's for something that I don't really believe in, but 2 mana to do something that's kind of mediocre is still 2 mana, right? So make something kind of mediocre into something kind of good. So I think this is a strong card. Riptide Gearhulk, 1 white white blue blue for a 2/5 with double strike and prowess. When this creature enters for each opponent, put up to 1 target non-land permanent that player controls into its owner's library, third from the top. Very powerful ability. Like, you're just kind of getting it all with this. I'm inclined to put this in tier 1 even despite the casting cost. Double strike prowess in a set with a lot of vehicles. It's kind of a thing. Like, that's kind of a thing. And you're getting a 2-for-1 right off the bat, right? You're putting something in their deck. Very powerful. This is a strong card. Rocketeer Boost Buggy. Green red for a 3/2. Whenever this vehicle attacks, create a treasure token, and you can pay exhaust for 3. This vehicle becomes an artifact creature. Put a +1 counter on it. So you can go play this on 2, exhaust on 3 into attack. Is that actually good? Seems fine. Like, how happy are you if you play this on 2, your opponent plays like a 3, like a 2/2, and then like a 3/3. You attack with this on turn 3 as a 4/3, and you trade and make a treasure. It's okay. Making a treasure on attacks is strong. It's an artifact. There is some affinity stuff, not in red or green, but there is some affinity for artifact stuff. It solves the vehicle problem in the late game. Nah, I'm leaving it. I'm leaving it for now. I'm being a hater. I'm gonna be a hater. Sob Sunan Luxa Embodied. 3 green blue for a 6/6 with reach, trample, and indestructible. It can't attack or block as long as it has an even number of counters on it, so it starts with 0. At the beginning of your first main phase, put a +1/+1 counter on it, then if it has an odd number of counters on it, draw 2 cards. So 5 mana 6/6, reach, trample, indestructible. It currently can block on the turn that you play it. The next turn, you put a counter on it, draw 2 cards, and it can't attack or block, I believe, right? Yeah, so you put the counter on it, and then it can't attack or block anymore. But you draw 2 cards. Pretty good. Yeah, this just seems insane, right? Like, it's just huge. And yeah, it can't attack every turn, but the turns that it can attack, it's gonna destroy everything. So, yep, no complaints about this card. Summit the Driving Force. 3 red, green, white for a 4/5 with first strike, vigilance, and haste. It has to start your engines. Other creatures you control get +X/+0, where X is your speed. And non-creature spells you cast cost X less to cast, where X is your speed. There's a lot of powerful lines of text on there. It's in tier 2. You got 3 colors. It buffs all your creatures immediately upon entering, which is insane. It has first strike. It has vigilance. Maybe I should just put it in tier 1. I should just put this in tier 1, right? It's got all this text on it. It's got all this text with first. Like, how do you ever block when your opponent casts this? You just don't. You just don't ever block. Yeah. I'll just put it in tier 1. We've been very harsh today. Been very, very harsh on some cards today. But we're trying to rectify that. Yeah, I just think this will be. Just has so much impact immediately. If you even have 2 creatures in play, this is just so much. And nothing can really block this, right? 4/5 first strike on turn, even on turn like 6, turn 7. Make sure non-creature spells cheaper, which doesn't really matter that much, but if you untap with this, you're probably already winning. So yeah, this just seems like a house. Sita Varma Masked Racer. Green blue for a 2/3 with exhaust. X green green blue, put X +1/+1 counters on it, then you may have base power and toughness of each other creature you control become this thing's power. That's a good ability, but not super relevant throughout most of the game. It's like a finisher, and your opponent can see it coming for like 5 turns, so it's just expensive. So I think it's fine, but not exciting. Sky Serpent Seeker. Green blue for a 1/1 flying death touch. It has exhaust for 4 colorless mana. Reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal 2 land cards. Put those land cards onto the battlefield tapped, and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. It's expensive, but it's kind of nice. Like, this blocks really well, right? So it's something that blocks really well. It doesn't get value on ETB, which is tough. Like, it's not, this card is worse than, Baleful Strix. Okay, it's not a shame. There's no shame in being worse card than Baleful Strix. Flying Death Touch is just a really good to have because your opponent kind of has to answer it. And it seems like a good 2-drop to me. On turn 4, you're going to be activating this fairly frequently if you're in a stable spot. You can actually hold up exhaust abilities, which is very nice. So you can hold it up on your opponent's turn and threat of activation, which is cool as well. Thundering Broodwagon, a 2 green black for a 6/5 menace reach vehicle. When it enters, destroy target non-land permanent opponent controls with mana value 4 or less. It has crew 3 and cycling for 2. So this is obviously extremely strong. The problem is the cost, and it's expensive, right? It's a very expensive vehicle. Is the full cycle of these 6/5s? So they're not all 6/5s, but a lot of them are 6/5s. And this one it's very strong, and cycling is really, really good. You can do the cycle. You could do the turn 2 play the thing that surveils. Turn 3 cycle this. Turn 4 reanimate it. It's not actually good, but you could do it. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's a cool card. It is a card you can do. You could play this in a black-white deck if you have the reanimation spell. You could try to make this work. And yeah, it's going to be really good. Veteran Beast Rider. 1 green-white for a 3/4. At the beginning of your end step, untap each creature you control. It has the ability 2 green-white. Creatures you control get +1/+1 until end of turn. So it's just strong. It's just a big creature on turn 3. It has a threat of activation ability on turn 4 that makes it hard for your opponent to block. So then all your creatures get to untap on turn 4. It's quite nice. Yeah, no complaints about this. It's just a solid card. Voyage Home. 5 blue-white for a sorcery. Affinity for artifacts. You draw 3 cards and gain 3 life. This is very powerful. So on turn 5, this is often going to cost 5 mana, and you'll be able to cast it and gain 3 life. That is very strong. I don't have anything else to say. It's a very strong card in blue-white. The problem is, I worry about blue-white. This is the better of the 2 blue-white signposts. I think almost for sure. I should up this another tier. This is a very strong draw spell. There just are enough artifacts in the set, and when I think about the blue defender, like the 2-mana 3/3 vehicle in blue, that's a card that comes to mind with this. There's a bunch of white artifacts. Yeah, I mean, you can imagine a world. There's not a ton of stuff that makes 2 artifacts on ETB, but I'm not that worried about it. I think this is just going to be really strong. Winter Cursed Rider. Blue-black for a 3/2 with ward, pay 2 life. Artifacts you control have ward, pay 2 life, and it has exhaust for 2 blue-black, and you tap it. Exile X artifact cards from your graveyard. Each other non-artifact creature gets -X until end of turn. It's just a strong 2-drop, and not much else to say about it, right? Just good, and you're gonna play it in every blue-black deck, but I don't think it's busted or anything. And the last multicolored card, Zahir Glory's Past. Black-white for a 3/2. Start your engines. Sacrifice another creature, surveil 1, activate only once each turn, and at max speed, whenever a non-token creature you control dies, create a tapped 2/2 black zombie creature token. So this is obviously very cool. You're getting a free sack outlet. You're getting a 2-mana 3/2 with Start Your Engines, which is nice. Tier 1 is maybe a bit high, but I don't know. It's very strong. I worry about black-white, but maybe this can make it work. Right? This is maybe the reason to do it. And yeah, I like this. It's good. I could move it. I could see moving it down. I don't really have that much of. I'm not attached to the tier 1 rating. I should probably move it down. Nah, I'll just do it. I'm just gonna do that. I've done that. There's just too many. There's just too many. Like, there's a lot of good 2-drops in the set. Like, is this really like standing above the rest? I think the answer is no. But yeah, when that ability's on, it's gonna be very hard to deal with, and it's gonna be on in most games. And that's it. That does it for the multicolored part of the set review. There is going to be more set review happening this weekend, so go check out the other videos as they become available. I will see you.